Good afternoon. Welcome to Midday Prime. I'm Shreya Upadhyay, and in the next 1 hour, we'll continue our coverage on the Afghanistan crisis. A while back at an all-party meet, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar briefed the parties on India's handling of the situation. Meanwhile, evacuations continue with Operation Devi Shakti being undertaken every day. Now, apart from this, we will also focus on the Paralympics that are underway at Tokyo. This and more up ahead, but first, the headlines. India's new drone policy notified. Policy simplifies procedures and reducing the compliance burden. Council set up to facilitate a business-friendly regulatory regime. Drone corridors to be developed for cargo deliveries. India's war against COVID continues with more than 60 crore 38 lakh vaccine doses administered so far across the country. Weekly positivity rate below 3% for over 2 months now. Kerala reports its highest daily number of fresh COVID cases in the last 3 months. Union Minister Muralidharan criticizes Kerala government for its failure to control rising infection, says Kerala government is relying on the PR works to salvage the situation. Government to launch E-shram portal national database on unorganized workers today. The portal aims at targeted identification of the unorganized workers. Well, President Ramnath Kovind has started a 4-day visit to Uttar Pradesh today, and he will be the chief guest at the 9th convocation of the Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University in Lucknow today. And India has, of course, undertaken the largest ever infrastructure project in Maldives, GMCP, that is Greater Malay Connectivity Project. This 6.74-kilometer long bridge and causeway link will connect the capital city Malé with adjoining islands. And of course, in sports, on day 2, the 5-test match series between England and India. England stands strong at 120 for no loss. Indian batting lineup collapses on day 1 of the Headingley tests. Host England bowl India out for a paltry 78 runs. After that, let's see the big news that we are tracking at this hour. But our focus remains on Afghanistan. A number of nations say that there is a high threat of a terrorist attack at the Kabul airport and have warned their citizens not to travel there. Australia, United States and United Kingdom have issued alerts to their citizens. Those already outside the airport are advised to leave the area immediately. More than 82,000 people have been airlifted from Kabul, which fell to the Taliban 10 days ago. Countries are rushing to evacuate people by the 31st of August deadline, and thousands of people are still waiting inside as well as outside the airport, hoping to fly out of the country. The Taliban have opposed extending the deadline, but also promised to allow foreigners and Afghans to leave the country beyond the 31st August, according to US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Well, the US and UK have warned their citizens to move away from the Kabul airport and avoid traveling there due to security threats. Both countries issued alerts late on Wednesday as thousands of people are still waiting inside and outside the airport, waiting to fly out. In an alert on Wednesday, the US State Department told those waiting at the Abbey Gate, East Gate or the North Gate to leave immediately. Earlier, the UK issued similar advice asking people to move away to a safe location and await further advice. Meanwhile, Australia has also warned its citizens against travelling to the Kabul airport. Australian Minister for Foreign Affairs Marise Payne said that there is a high threat of a terror attack near the airport in Kabul. Canberra urged its citizens and those with a visa for Australia to leave the area. The warning heightens the risk that scores of Afghans holding visas for Australia could be left behind as Canberra readies to end its evacuation program. Now, around 4,000 people have been evacuated so far by Australia over the last 8 days.
We remain focused on this safe evacuation from Afghanistan for as many Australians and visa holders as possible, for as long as possible. Our clear travel advice is now, do not travel to Hamid Karzai International Airport. And if you're in the area of the airport, move to a safe location and await further advice. Afghanistan remains highly volatile and dangerous. Be aware of the potential for violence and security threats with large crowds. There is an ongoing and very high threat of terrorist attack.
Now, French Prime Minister Jean Castex said his country will no longer be able to evacuate people from the Kabul airport after Friday night. Thousands have been trying to flee the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, many through Kabul's international airport. That triggered a massive airlift of those who were trying to escape. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Wednesday said that around 1,500 Americans may be awaiting evacuation from Afghanistan. Addressing the media, Blinken said the U.S. has evacuated at least 4,500 U.S. citizens as well as their families from Afghanistan since mid-August. Blinken said the State Department estimates there were about 6,000 Americans who wanted to leave Afghanistan when the airlift began on the 14th of August.
Over the last 10 days, roughly 4,500 of these Americans have been safely evacuated, along with immediate family members. Over the past 24 hours, we've been in direct contact with approximately 500 additional Americans and provided specific instructions on how to get to the airport safely. For the remaining roughly 1,000 contacts that we had, who may be Americans seeking to leave Afghanistan, we're aggressively reaching out to them multiple times a day through multiple channels of communication, phone, email, text messaging, to determine whether they still want to leave and to get the most up-to-date information and instructions to them for how to do so.
The U.S. Secretary of State was still on track to complete the operations at Kabul airport by the end of the month, he said. But he also said that there was no deadline on the effort to help people who want to leave Afghanistan, both Americans and others, and that the effort would continue as long as it takes.
There is no deadline on our work to help any remaining American citizens who decide they want to leave to do so, along with the many Afghans who have stood by us over these many years and want to leave and have been unable to do so. That effort will continue every day past August 31st. The United States, our allies and partners, and more than half of the world's countries, 114 in all, issued a statement making it clear to the Taliban that they have a responsibility to hold to that commitment and provide safe passage for anyone who wishes to leave the country, not just for the duration of our evacuation and relocation mission, but for every day thereafter.
Now, the U.S. has stressed that American evacuees are its first priority, even as it attempts also to airlift Afghans who work for the U.S. government, as well as what it calls vulnerable Afghans. Blinken said around 46% of the more than 82,000 people who have so far been evacuated have been women and children.
About 46% have been women and children. And we've been intensely focused, particularly on making sure that we can get women at risk out of harm's way. Second, with regard to women and other Afghans at risk going forward, I will use every diplomatic, economic, political, and assistance tool at my disposal, working closely with allies and partners who feel very much the same way, to do everything possible to uphold their basic rights.
The Pentagon, meanwhile, said the U.S. military will continue evacuating people from the Kabul airport until the August 31st deadline if needed, but is not expected to continue in that role after the pullout deadline. Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby in a media briefing said that military helicopters have been used to help Americans near Kabul to evacuate, but such operations were focused on the area in and around Kabul.
If Americans are still there and need help getting back, that the United States government is going to do what we do every day all around the world, and we'll see what we can do to help them. I wouldn't anticipate that there would be a military role in that sort of assistance.
Now, while the evacuation process continues in Afghanistan, thousands of people on Wednesday were seen waiting in the scorching heat outside Kabul airport, eagerly to get on a flight to leave the country. There have been fears among people in Kabul after the Taliban swept into the country to bring to an end the two-decade foreign military presence.
I have been worked with a foreign company. I come here to see the situation, but I see that our brothers, as you see that all people of Kabul came here. I think those who have documents come, including those who have no documents. So my dear brother, they wrote in English and in Dari that the gate is closed, but we don't know where to go and where to refer, and ask if our situation could be solved or not.
Now, the Taliban have told Germany that Afghans with legal documents will be able to travel on commercial flights beyond the August 31st cutoff date, after which evacuations from Kabul airport will no longer be allowed. Western nations continue to rush to evacuate people as fears mount that many could be left behind to an uncertain fate under the country's new Taliban rulers. Buses with evacuees from Afghanistan arrived at the Dulles Expo Center in United States on Wednesday. Mandatory medical checkup was done before sending the evacuated Afghans to military bases around the country for shelter. President Joe Biden's administration has scrambled to evacuate U.S. citizens and Afghan allies amid the chaos at the Kabul airport ahead of the deadline. In the rush, the Biden administration has not said exactly how many Afghans have been allowed to enter United States. Now, a plane carrying 292 people evacuated from Afghanistan landed in Spain's Torrejón de Ardoz military base near Madrid on Wednesday. After arriving in Spain, the evacuees were transferred onto an Air Europa flight in Dubai to Torrejón de Ardoz. Now, the Spanish military base is serving as the European Union hub and is being used to host Afghan refugees and their families who worked with the European Union. The base has been the entry point for more than 1,400 people so far. Now, Spain could temporarily host up to 4,000 Afghans who had worked for the United States at two military bases used by the US military in southern Spain. Meanwhile, Germany's Bundeswehr on Wednesday also announced they had carried out a successful nighttime helicopter evacuation from Kabul. According to Bundeswehr, more than 5,000 from 45 different nations had been evacuated as of Wednesday in 33 flights, including 3,066 Afghan citizens. Now, with less than a week left until all foreign troops leave, many Afghans who helped Western nations might be left behind to an uncertain fate under the Taliban. The US military, meanwhile, said it will shift its focus in the final 2 days from assisting fleeing civilians to evacuating its own troops. Meanwhile, the Dutch military also on Wednesday continued evacuations of civilians from Kabul. The Foreign Ministry said so far more than 1,250 Dutch citizens had requested evacuation from Afghanistan. Around 500 of them have been flown out of the country, along with around 700 Afghans who worked in the Dutch embassy, served as translators for the Dutch, or had other ties to Dutch missions in the country and their relatives. Two military aircraft with 90 to 140 passengers on board were carrying out flights over the course of the week. On the other hand, Mexico on Wednesday received 124 media workers and their family members from Afghanistan. They arrived at Mexico City's International Airport, where Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard waited to greet them. A former Kabul and Mexico bureau chief for the Times, who maintained a cordial relationship with Ebrard, made the request that Mexico receive the refugees. Other journalists from the Wall Street Journal in Afghanistan are expected to arrive later in Mexico. Well, Mexico also received 5 members of an all-girl Afghan robotics team who were evacuated from Afghanistan after the takeover by Taliban. The safe arrival of the robotics team in Mexico was made possible by an extensive international effort and coordination from a group of volunteers who helped the girls. Mexico has pledged to aid Afghan women and girls. Other members of the robotics team landed in Qatar in recent days. Now, the robotics team, made up of women and girls as young as 14, has been heralded for winning international awards for its robots and started work in March on an open-source, low-cost ventilator as the coronavirus pandemic hit the war-torn nation. Last week, 9 members of an all-girl Afghan robotics team were evacuated from Kabul. They are currently in Doha. The team, originally from the city of Herat, first made headlines after winning a special award at an international robotics competition in Washington, D.C. in 2017.
They have fear in there, and I wanted from the national community that don't leave Afghanistan, be in there, because our people, our children, all of them need their support, and I wanted from the government that let the girls do their education, continue their education and go to school. I wasn't in that time 20 years ago, but my parents said for me that in that time girls didn't have, they didn't let to go to schools, they didn't have freedom, they should be, in that time they were always in the homes and do the homes work, and so I hope that this time it wasn't like that time. And I hope that they can continue their education and they will have the freedom that Islam say for them.
You know, when we moved and we had flight, about 3 days, we were just going to airport and again coming back to the home because the airport was too crowded and lots of people escaped, and they were so scared, and they were trying to just move Afghanistan and leave Afghanistan and move in another country. And on that time, when we entered to the plane, we were so sad, and because we left everything in Afghanistan, we had dreams, we left our families, we left our friends, we left all of our relatives, and without saying any goodbye to them.
Now, fear and worry prevail among the people who are still residing in Afghanistan. On Wednesday, vehicles patrolled Kabul streets with the Taliban flag flying. Vendors and markets hope for peace under the Taliban rule. There are a few who are concerned and are uncertain about the future. Meanwhile, traders in capital Kabul on Wednesday demanded that shuttered banks should be opened as soon as possible. People were seen queuing outside banks and ATMs a day after Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid said that all banks will open soon. Meanwhile, prices of staples like flour, oil and rice have risen by as much as 10 to 20% since the Taliban seized control of the country. With banks still closed, many people have been unable to access their savings. The Taliban have appointed an acting head of Afghanistan Central Bank to help ease growing economic turmoil more than a week after the Islamist movement seized the capital. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has reaffirmed Canada's commitment to aid in evacuations from Afghanistan. Trudeau said leaders of the Group of 7 Nations on Tuesday agreed on the need to press the Taliban to allow people to leave Afghanistan after the August 31st deadline. He added Canada would continue to welcome Afghan refugees.
The bottom line for Canadians is this: we are going to continue to do absolutely everything we can to get as many people out of Afghanistan in the coming days as we possibly can. But once this evacuation phase is done, we're not stopping our work. We're going to continue with the international community to put pressure on the Taliban to ensure that people can leave the country. We will continue to work with neighbors and partners in the region to get more and more people to safety. We've committed to welcoming over 20,000 Afghan refugees to Canada, and we will work very closely on an ongoing fashion to do that.
All right, my colleague Ramesh is joining us right now. He's been tracking developments in Afghanistan and he's going to get us more perspective on the situation there. Ramesh, good afternoon. We've been hearing reports of, various reports that have been coming in from Afghanistan, and just a few days left before the August 31st deadline. We also know that a lot of nations, while they're carrying out evacuation process, they're also warning their citizens of a terror attack at the Kabul airport. You've been tracking developments in the crisis-hit nation. What is the current status today?
Well, good afternoon. By any reckoning, this is a humanitarian crisis of epic proportion that is developing in Afghanistan in general and Kabul in particular as we speak. As you mentioned, there are reports Americans and their allies have warned local Afghans and others from milling around or near the Kabul airport because of a possible terror strike. But that apart, things remain much the same as they have been over the past 12 odd days since the fall of Kabul to Taliban. And as you mentioned, we are barely 5 days away from the self-imposed US deadline of 31st August for pulling out all American and by extension NATO troops from Afghanistan. And we've heard from many actors, many players in the last several hours, including from US Foreign Minister Antony Blinken, who has said for the first time on the record that as far as the US is concerned, its evacuation process, there is no deadline for the evacuation of US and its
Ramesh, I'll request you to pause here. We're getting a live of the External Affairs Minister speaking about the all-party meet that we had today about Afghanistan. We'll go across live there.
Want to give you, all of us political parties, including the government, is that on this matter we all have a very similar view. We have a strong national position on Afghanistan. The friendship with the Afghan people is something which matters to all of us. So we approach this situation very much in a spirit of, I would say, national unity. So there were concerns. Most of the questions and issues were about evacuation. I shared with them that we have under Operation Devi Shakti done 6 flights. The latest flights was this morning, which took off at 3 o'clock. We have brought back most of the Indians, but not all of them. There are still a few out there. Some of them could not make it for the flight yesterday. But definitely we will try and bring out everybody. We have also brought out some Afghan citizens who wanted to come to India at this point of time. We have tried to address many of the other issues, like by instituting an e-visa policy. So the overall sense was that government is very, very strongly committed to ensuring the full evacuation as soon as possible, and also saying that in terms of any international decisions which are made, any gatherings which are there, that our diplomacy, our role, our interests are recognized. We are in touch with many partners. There will be many more meetings in the coming days. I think some of you know, last 2 days President Putin and Chancellor Merkel spoke to Prime Minister. There will be, I think, some other calls at his level. There are many other foreign minister calls at my level. So there will be a lot of activity on the Afghanistan front. But at the moment, as I said, our focus is on evacuation, and the government is doing everything to ensure that we bring back our people. Thank you very much.
तालिबान के साथ रिश्तों को लेकर क्या बात हुई है? सरकार का क्या रिश्ता रहेगा?
Forward policy, is there going to be engagement with the Taliban?
नहीं, ऐसा है, आप वहाँ काबुल की स्थिति, अफगानिस्तान की स्थिति तो देख रहे हैं. अभी इस सिचुएशन में जब वहाँ सिचुएशन सेटल डाउन नहीं हुआ, अगर आपके जो पॉलिसी, आगे की पॉलिसी के सवाल जो हैं, आप इसमें आपको थोड़ा और पेशेंस दिखाना होगा. थैंक यू.
All right, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar there speaking with the media after that crucial all-party meet that the government did with all political parties on the crisis that is panning out in Afghanistan, as well as India's response. He, of course, summarized India's response to it. He said that a lot of activity is expected, whether at the prime ministerial level or at his own foreign minister's level. But India's focus continues to remain on the evacuations that are taking place under Operation Devi Shakti. Remember, India has been evacuating not just its own nationals but foreign nationals as well, Afghans, Nepalese. They're all being evacuated by India from Afghanistan, and External Affairs Minister said that there was a national unity. There was all political parties agreed upon the fact that there should be one single national response to the crisis that is panning out in Afghanistan, and that India should respond to it very carefully because of the magnitude of the humanitarian crisis that we are seeing in Afghanistan, as well as simultaneously, most importantly, focus on the evacuation from the Kabul airport. We'll get you the latest from there, but right now we move on. The United Nations World Food Programme has warned that people in Afghanistan are facing a hunger crisis. A United Nations assessment of the food and security and nutrition situation in Afghanistan finds that 1 in 3 Afghans face acute food insecurity. According to an internal document of the World Food Programme, around 14 million people are hungry, while 2 million children are malnourished and urgently need treatment. More than 3.5 million out of a population of 38 million are internally displaced. Just to make matters worse, a massive drought has devastated crops as well. More than 40% of the country's crops were lost to drought this year. UN agencies have warned of food shortages to Afghanistan as early as September without urgent aid funding, as it emerged first aid supplies, including surgical equipment and severe malnutrition kits, that were struck due to restrictions at the Kabul airport. Now, Turkey has meanwhile said that it may continue to run the Kabul airport after the full withdrawal of its military forces. In an interview with Turkish private broadcaster, President Tayyip Erdogan's spokesperson Ibrahim Kalin said that talks were heading in a positive way. Taliban have asked Turkey for technical help to run the Kabul airport after the departure of foreign forces, but insist that Ankara's military also withdraw fully by the end August deadline. However, a final decision would be made by the 31st of August deadline for foreign forces to leave the country and end a 20-year military involvement in Afghanistan. Keeping the airport open after foreign forces hand over control is vital, not just for Afghanistan to stay connected to the world, but also to maintain aid, supplies and operations. And after that, let's now move on to our developing story. Now, the government has announced a new drone policy 2021. Notifying the new drone policy, the Ministry of Civil Aviation has scrapped the provision of security clearance that was earlier required before registration or license issuance for drones. Under the new policy, the standard operating procedures and training procedure manuals will be prescribed by the DGCA on the Digital Sky platform for self-monitoring by users. No approvals will be required unless there is a significant departure from the prescribed procedures. The ministry has also cut the amount of maximum penalty for violations of standard operating procedures to 1 lakh rupees. Moreover, the policy will allow drone operation in green zones without permission. Now, green zone means the airspace up to vertical distance of 400 feet or 120 meter that has not been designated as a red or a yellow zone in the airspace map. The policy will also facilitate a business-friendly regulatory regime. The import of drones will be regulated by Directorate General of Foreign Trade. Under the Drones Rules 2021, drone corridors will be developed for cargo deliveries. The coverage of drones under the rules has been increased from 300 to 500 kilograms. This will cover drone taxis also. Now, a Drone Promotion Council will be set up by the government with participation from academia, startups and other stakeholders to facilitate a growth-oriented regulatory regime. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has lauded the new drone policy 2021, saying that the policy would provide impetus to India's strength in technology and innovation. The Prime Minister in a tweet said, and I quote, "The new drone rules usher in a landmark moment for this sector in India. The rules are based on the premise of trust and self-certification. Approvals, compliance, requirements and entry barriers have been significantly reduced. The new drone rules will tremendously help startups and our youth working in this sector. It will open up new possibilities for innovation and business. It will help leverage India's strengths in innovation, technology and engineering to make India a drone hub," unquote. Now let me quickly take you through the salient features of the new drone rules 2021, of which the Prime Minister also talked about. Let us look at some of the features that this entails now. The number of forms or permissions have been reduced from 25 to 5. Remember, earlier on there were of course a lot of forms that had to be filled, a lot of permissions that had to be taken. Now from 25 that has been significantly reduced to 5. A number of approvals have been abolished, unique authorization number, the prototype type or identification number, the certificate of conformance, certificate of maintenance, operator permit and various other such authorizations have been abolished so that drone users can get clearances smoothly. Next, of course, no security clearance required for registration or license issuance. This was also one of the steps that was required earlier. Now this will be not required. Fees for permissions has been reduced to nominal levels. Remember, drone users would want that fees to be that was expensive earlier to be reduced, to be decreased to nominal affordable levels. Then interactive airspace map to be displayed, yellow zone reduced from 45 kilometers to 12 kilometers. Now remember, an interactive space map basically has red, yellow and green zones. Red is restricted, yellow is the authorized zone and green is warning zone, where you can still go ahead and use the drone but with certain restrictions. This is of course near the airports. Now no permission is required for operating in the green zone. As I said, green zone is a zone where you can operate drones but with certain restrictions placed there. No pilot license for nano and micro drones for non-commercial use. A very significant change in the drone policy, because there are a number of users of drones that use it for non-commercial purposes, for research and innovation, for example, and now they will be able to use it very, very smoothly. Drone corridors will be developed for cargo deliveries. Extremely important function of drones. Cargo deliveries will be enabled and will be smoothened out with this this policy. Unmanned aircraft systems promotion council to be set up to facilitate a business-friendly regulatory regime. So basically a huge impetus to businesses as well, to startups as well. And this of course is a landmark judgment, as we told you, landmark policy change about drones, about the usage of drones across the country that we are seeing. And to get us more perspective on this, to help us understand what this really means for drone users, I am joined by my guest, Mr. Ajay Lele. He is of course from the Security and Space Agency. Is a security and space analyst at IDSA. Mr. Lele, thanks very much for joining us on Midday Prime on DD India. This is a very significant policy change when it comes to drone usage across the country. A lot of permissions, a lot of approvals have been abolished, therefore smoothening out a lot of the process that was due earlier for drone users across the country.
I think this is a very important document as far as usage of drone is concerned, and government has actually moved in a very lightning speed, because we had a document in month of March which was a pretty tedious document, having a lot of rules, regulations, a lot of forms to be filled. Hence on 15th of July, government came out with a fresh guidelines, that is the drone guidelines for 2021. That is a draft document. The government had asked views of the people, because the document was made available in open source. By 5th of August, the views were expected to be received by the government, and the government was subsequently to work on it. So that means within a span of at least 10 to 15 days only, government has finalized the document and Ministry of Civil Aviation has now come out with this document. This actually indicates the urgency of having these rules and regulations in place. Already 10 days back, government has issued a permission for operation of drones for 1 year with the major agencies like Steel Authority of India, Mahindra, and few other organizations which have sought that permission. Now with this particular document, I think ease of business is going to come up. One has to look at this document from 2 to 3 angles. One is that as a drone user, it has become very easy now to operate drones. Number 2 is that if you are a drone manufacturer, again it is becoming easy. That's why Prime Minister has spoken about startups and other agencies. Thirdly, when we are looking at a cargo development, cargo delivery, I think this is a very significant step because as you know that particularly the delivery of a cargo through air means, that means by using aircrafts, comes to be very costly affair. So there is a possibility now, the cost reduction will be there because now we are identifying specific drone related corridors. Drones have also been permitted to be used to a level of around 500 kgs. That means good amount of a cargo also can go from place A to place B. So there will be a cost reduction. At the same time, Indian startups can invest themselves into developing new drones. For research and development also, there are very less rules and regulations now. For micro drones and for other smaller drones, as you already mentioned, we do not have a requirement of any pilots also. If you go through the document carefully, the document also has identified basically how to train the pilots also. So there is a proper plan in place. And one important aspect which has been indicated today is that Drone Promotion Council has also been set up. I think now there will be a body which will be responsible for everything. And the need of the hour was that something on the lines of a single window clearance, where from the forms which has been reduced from 25 to 5 to establishment of a drone council, I think that is a very significant step and that will boost up the entire architecture of a drone in the country, as a user also and as a developer of a drone also.
Mr. Lele, you know, this new change, this new policy is also based, as the Prime Minister mentioned, on, it has been framed on the basis of trust, on the basis of self-certification. Now, one of the major concerns with drone usage across the country has been that from the security point of view. Now, where do we place security in the new policy and how does it change things when we see it from the prism of security?
I think if you really look at it, the issue of the security has started hitting the minds of the common people, particularly after we had the attack on Jammu Air Force Station by using drones. So definitely the security angle is extremely important, and if you really look at these policy guidelines, it is not been explicitly saying it, but definitely there are various checks and balances in regard to security. That's why you can see that there are green zones, there are yellow zones, there are red zones. So basically the identification at a vertical level as well as at a lateral level also has been done. The green zone is essentially from the surface of the earth till 120 meters. 8 to 12 kilometers outside the airports, there will be certain amount of lesser rules. Inside the area, there will be slightly stringent rules. So the security aspect has been taken into care, but basically based on rules and regulations instead of giving certain amount of permissions by various agencies. So you can operate drones in a very good fashion in the areas where it is permitted. In the areas where there is going to be a certain amount of a problem, definitely there are slightly more stringent rules and regulations. And other aspect is that they are going to develop the zones or change the zone based on the security requirements also. That means if there is a certain amount of intelligence inputs that there is a possibility of certain amount of activity happening in a particular area, quickly that red zone, quickly that green zone could be converted into a yellow zone or a red zone also. So all these types of, one can say, leverages are already existing in the policy.
Okay, so you mean to say that, these zones which will be displayed in an interactive map are sort of flexible and they can be changed?
Based on the security challenges, it could be changed.
All right. Mr. Lele, also, how do we see this drone usage and drone manufacturing now moving ahead in the country? What challenges lie right now in the current situation, and what more can we do to ease out the manufacturing and usage of drones now?
You see, as far as usage of drones are concerned, imagination is actually the end point of it. Like we have been listening that even a pizza could be delivered by using drones. During the COVID era, there are countries which have used drones for the purposes of delivering medicines. So various areas which are of a commercial nature, which are of a social nature, which are related with your health problems. Every area there could be a usage of a drone. Only thing is that ours is a too populous a country. The growth of a country, particularly the cities and the other areas, there are certain amount of problems. So for the activity of a drone operations also, if you are having high-rise buildings and other things, there could be certain amount of problems, but I think these are the teething troubles. As you start operating the systems, definitely one can learn from it. And that's what the policy document also says, that after 6 months they are going to take a stock of the situation based on the challenges which have been faced into 6 months. That means it's a very proactive policy. At the same time, it's a dynamic policy also.
Yes.
Understanding from the challenges which have been encountered by various agencies, they are going to do certain amount of changes also in coming few days. So I think from that point of view, the policy document is taking cognizance that yes, we have not invested majorly into this area. These are the initial phases. We have to learn from our own experiences only, and the moment we learn from experiences, we can carry out the changes if required.
Absolutely. Mr. Lele, also help us understand how this really sort of strengthens the startup ecosystem and how this really helps young innovators and research across the country when, you know, minor changes and minor things are changed in a policy and they lead to bigger changes and bigger helps in their businesses.
You see, till date, drone was considered to be a very high-end technology. But now people have started understanding that this is a technology which could be developed into your smaller laboratories also. So for all these years, this technology was considered more as a high-end technology where only multiple agencies which are making major investments into business sector can do those investments. But now there is a realization that yes, you can have in a limited investments also start making these drones. Now there are various qualities and various types of drones also. So you got a nano drone, you got a micro drone, so on and so forth. So from kids play to using it for the cargo, I think the range is too huge. So definitely the startups also will have an advantage based on what sort of market economics they are looking at. They can make those sorts of investments. They can invest into starting up with a nano drone or a micro drone, and then subsequently based on the market and based on what they perceive that the future lies into, they can get into the production of the bigger drone systems also. So I think as far as startups are concerned, there is a huge spectrum available for them to make investments.
All right, Mr. Ajay Lele, thanks very much for joining us on Midday Prime on DD India and helping us understand the new drone policy 2021, a plethora of changes there by the government to ease out the manufacturing and operations of drone usage across India. All right, now moving on, the government will launch the E-shram portal, the national database on unorganized workers today. The portal aims at targeted identification of the unorganized workers. The portal will maintain a database of workers in the country's unorganized sector. The workers will be able to register themselves on the portal shortly after its launch. On Tuesday, the Labour Minister Bhupendra Yadav unveiled the logo of the E-shram portal and said it will be the national database of our nation builders, our Shram Yogis. He also added that the portal will take welfare schemes to their doorstep. And after that, let's move on to our national crime segment. All right, let's take a look at the latest data by the Health Ministry, giving an overall glimpse of the COVID-19 situation in the country. The total recoveries continue to improve, while active cases have declined on a daily basis. Now, if you look at the numbers, 34,159 recoveries have been reported in the last 24 hours, taking the total number of recoveries to 3,17,88,440. The recovery rate currently stands at 97.63%. COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours stood at 46,164. The active case account for 1.3% of the total positive cases. India's active caseload stands at 3,33,725. The weekly positivity rate is at 2.2%, which is less than 3% for the last 62 days. The daily positivity rate is also below 3% for the last 31 days at 2.58%. According to the ICMR, 51 crore 31 lakh tests have been conducted so far. Now moving on Wednesday, Kerala reported its highest daily number of fresh COVID cases in the last 3 months. 31,445 cases were reported, making the active cases to 1,70,313. Total positivity rate has reached an alarming rate of 19.3%. 215 deaths were also confirmed on Wednesday as related to COVID. Meanwhile, the state is ramping up its testing, especially in districts where vaccination is relatively low amid a continuing upward trend in the TPR. Now, more COVID testing camps will be opened in the identified hotspots, and random sample tests will be performed on frontline workers and staff of essential goods stores to identify the emerging hotspots. The state has also decided to intensify the vaccination drive with an aim to vaccinate all eligible population with at least 1 dose by the end of September. 10 lakh vaccine doses procured directly by the state is being handed over to private health institutions to widen the vaccination coverage. Today, Union Minister of State V. Muralidharan came harshly on the state government, alleging that the state government has been nonchalant in its approach in taking scientific steps to rein in the infection. He also alleged that instead of addressing the real issues behind COVID situation, the state government is relying on PR works to salvage the situation. My colleague Ajay is joining us from Kerala to get us the ground report in Kerala. Ajay, good afternoon. Very concerning situation there in Kerala. While the WHO is saying that the country, India, is moving towards an endemic stage of the pandemic, we are seeing rising number of cases in Kerala, and rapidly at that.
Yes, indeed, this is quite alarming right now because the TPR of 19% is not at all a situation to be to have some consolation about. It's too alarming right now, and this is to be put in the context of that it is the highest number in the last 3 months. It was on May 12th. State recorded its highest ever, that was 43,000, and then thereafter it was showing a downward slope, and now it's again shooting up. But this number, especially the 31,445, this number should be judged in terms of the reduced number of tests that have been that the state has witnessed over this last 4 days owing to Onam holidays. If you look at those 3 days, the number of tests has come down even below 1 lakh. And on one day it was just 65,000. Normally the state used to witness minimum 1.5 lakh tests to the previous week before that. So that means maybe there is a chance that the pending test moved towards this week, and it is showing up right now. But whatever that's the case, the TPR of 19 is indeed an alarming situation right now, and unless it is able to rein in its hospital infrastructure, however good it is, it will be overrun if this state is not controlled. State is having the consolation that so far its infrastructure, its hospital infrastructure is able to handle the situation as of now, because there is enough vacancy in terms of the ICU beds and in terms of ventilators.
Ajay,
Yes.
apart from more and more testing, what other steps have the authorities taken to arrest the cases?
Right now, Kerala is, from what we understand from interactions with the health authorities, they are all hoping on the vaccination effect right now. If you see the population of Kerala, in absolute terms, almost 65%, they have received at least 1 dose. And if you look in terms of the eligible population, it has been disclosed 66% at least. So that is one direction which state is trying to get things under control. At least by the end of September, all eligible people will be vaccinated with at least 1 dose. And this is how state is going forward in one direction, and second way is to get more restrictions on the ground in a focused manner. Kerala has tweaked its criteria of identifying the triple lockdown areas. Kerala has moved to a new criteria called WIPR, weekly infection rate per population. That means out of 1,000, what is the weekly incidences in that area? If it crosses 8, then triple lockdown is to be ensured.
All right.
Yes.
All right, Ajay, we'll have to see that pans out. Thanks very much for joining us. With those inputs, all of you there in Kerala, please take care and be safe. Now, moving on, in a significant achievement, India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage has crossed the 60 crore landmark milestone. Cumulatively, 60 crore 38 lakh 46,475 vaccine doses have been administered so far under the nationwide vaccination drive. More than 80 lakh 40,407 vaccine doses have been administered on the 222nd day, that is on Wednesday. Well, in other news, 3 of the last 6 swarups of the Holy Scripture, Sri Guru Granth Sahib, were flown in from the war-torn Afghanistan on a flight to India. Many gurudwaras across the country, Shukrana is being offered there as a special prayer. Special ardas was done in this regard in the Gurudwara in Jalandhar. Special Shukrana ardas was also offered in Himachal Pradesh's Shimla. Remember, all across the country, the Shukran Ardas is being offered. In Bhopal too, Madhya Pradesh, a special ardas was done today at Gurudwara Singh Sabha located in the Arera colony. And the Shukran Ardas was also offered in the state of Uttar Pradesh in a Gurudwara in Kanpur. The special prayer was also conducted in Punjab's Amritsar in a Gurudwara. Along with this, the Shukran Ardas was also offered in Jammu's Vigyana Gurudwara. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi today received a copy of a book, Accelerating India, from former Minister of State for Tourism, KJ Alphonse. Sharing a picture on Twitter, Prime Minister Modi wrote, and I quote, "My valued colleague, Shri KJ Alphonse, has made a commendable effort to encapsulate facets of India's reform journey in his work, Accelerating India. Delighted to receive a copy from him," unquote. And some good news now, the dominance of Prasar Bharati in the digital world can be seen clearly, whereas national and regional channels of Doordarshan and All India Network gained popularity in no time. Here's a look at this report.
Trust of viewers on Prasar Bharati's digital network can be seen clearly. Currently, digital subscriber base of Doordarshan and All India Radio across both news and general infotainment stands at 1.73 crores. Doordarshan and All India Radio teams across both news and general infotainment have added a cumulative of more than 15 million digital subscribers on YouTube alone between 2017 and 2021. YouTube account of your favorite channel DD News has now 4 million subscribers. YouTube subscribers of DD National is more than 4 lakh now. Twitter handle of DD News has more than 3.2 million followers. Facebook page of DD News is now a family of close to 2 million users. DD India, the international channel of Doordarshan, is quickly gaining popularity on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. All India Radio's Twitter handle has close to 3 million followers. YouTube channel of All India Radio has 4 lakh subscribers. Various regional channels of Doordarshan Network have gained popularity in no time. YouTube channel of DD Manipur has a subscriber base of 2 lakh. YouTube channel of DD Assam has a subscriber base of close to 1.5 lakh. YouTube channel of Gujarat's DD Girnar has a subscriber base of 3.5 lakh. YouTube channel of Maharashtra's DD Sahyadri has a subscriber base of more than 7 lakh. YouTube channel of DD Karnataka has a subscriber base of close to 10 lakh. YouTube channel of DD Uttarakhand has a subscriber base of 2.25 lakh. This data clearly shows the trust of viewers on Prasar Bharati's digital network. Bureau Report, DD India.
And DD News YouTube channel has crossed the 4 million subscriber mark. Thanks to your trust in India's national broadcaster, your channel has seen a steady growth trajectory since its inception in 2013.
In an organic journey with you people, today DD News YouTube channel has achieved a major milestone of 4 million subscribers, as you see here. And this reflects your trust in us, and definitely we believe that there's a section of audience that needs only news, complete news. Let me give you a glimpse of our playlist. Here is our playlist, and we have different sections. We have a recent add-on to the playlists, that is Azadi Ka Safar, where you can get stories of our brave freedom fighters. And along with this, if in case you have missed any of our programs on television, definitely you can visit our YouTube channel. With this, thank you once again to all the audience sitting there who are still believing in the public broadcaster of India. We will definitely keep up the promise of coming up with the latest news, simple news, and only news for you people. Thank you once again. I definitely believe, and we all believe, that you are going to pour in same love for DD India YouTube too.
Absolutely. Don't forget to subscribe to our DD India YouTube channel, DD India, and of course on Twitter we are at DD India Live. So do follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And after that, now let's have a look at what's making news across the globe. Well, India has undertaken the largest ever infrastructure in Maldives. The project is funded under the Indian grant of $100 million and line of credit of $400 million. A contract has been signed between Afghans and the government of Maldives for the construction of the Greater Malay Connectivity Project. The signing ceremony was attended by the Indian High Commissioner Sanjay Sudhir and senior management from Afghans, Maldives Minister of National Planning and Infrastructure, Minister of Economic Development, the Finance Minister and the Transport Minister. The 6.74 kilometer long bridge and causeway link will connect Malé with the adjoining islands of Willingli, Gulfilfalu and Thilafushi. The project, which will commence soon, will provide a major boost to connectivity between the 4 islands, accounting for about half of the Maldivian population. During his conversation with Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the 14th of July, the Maldivian President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih conveyed his full satisfaction with the progress on the project. India has also undertaken about 30 community-oriented projects under the grant, of which about half have already been completed. India and the Maldives have forged a strong bilateral tie since President Solih assumed office in November 2018. India's first foreign policy of the Maldives and India's neighborhood first foreign policy have worked in tandem and have brought out mutual synergies. Expressing gratitude to India, Foreign Minister of Maldives Abdullah Shahid has tweeted, and I quote him, "Connecting peoples and countries. Delighted that the contract for the Greater Malay Connectivity Malay to Thilafushi link project has been signed between the Ministry of National Planning, Housing and Infrastructure and Afghans Infrastructure Limited. This is a defining moment in the development journey of Maldives. Constructed with financial support from India, the largest infrastructure project to be executed in Maldives will stand as an enduring tribute to the strong Maldives-India partnership. Thank you, PM Narendra Modi and External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar for supporting our development journey," unquote. And on that note, it's a wrap in Midday Prime, but news and updates continue on DD India on the other side. And before we go, a quick reminder to do follow us on Twitter at DD India Live and subscribe to our YouTube channel on DD India. Thanks very much for joining us right now. Bye-bye.